Hey, IT Nation, Sean Lardo here with my co-host, Matt Topper. Hi, Matt. Hold on one second, Matt. This is the first episode we've recorded in a little while, so we're working out the kinks again and knocking off the dust. But this is the Wise Up podcast. And so, Matt, again, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing awesome. There's only one small problem. The Dunkin' down the road is getting remodeled, so we're down to tea for this episode. So it could be rough.
Great. So basically, what Matt's saying, for those who don't understand, is we have upgraded the show today to a better quality. So with that said, for those that don't know Matt and haven't watched this, and which is weird, I don't know why they wouldn't have watched it by now because they're pretty epic. What is the Wise Up podcast all about?
Yeah, so the Wise Up podcast is an opportunity to talk to people in the space that you wouldn't normally get to see, or that are sometimes behind the scenes. Sometimes the people in front of the scenes, right? People on stage, but it's just a showcase to talk about ideas in a way that's not talking about the company, their products, just things that they're seeing. There's so much knowledge out there in the channel, in the hallway track, and all the people you might run into. If you're not on the conference circuit, if you will, if you're not spending all your time on the road, you might not get to meet some of these people. So we're trying to bring some of that to our audience, to our viewers, listeners, and the Wise Up part of the podcast is we want you to take away something actionable you can implement in your business, not just like, hey, here's this new thing you can buy.
Absolutely. That was pretty well put for the long break we've had. That you did really well. So good job.
Well, now you remember what the show is, so we can go.
Yeah, because I was wondering what the show was on my invite. But anyway, so yeah, as Matt mentioned, that's what we're here for. So we bring a new guest on every episode. It's not just me and Matt bantering, even though I feel like that'd be a great episode into itself.
We should do that.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't. We wouldn't have a podcast anymore. But we do have a guest. And Matt, if you'd like to introduce our guest for today, that'd be great.
Yeah, so let's bring up our guest, Rich Freeman. So we attempted to do this episode and film this episode, a few months ago, at least, maybe even a little longer than that, and had a slew of technical difficulties. So we're trying this again.
Mostly my fault, and I'll take that responsibility and credit. But yes. And so for people that don't know Rich, which would be weird, Rich is from Channelholic, but Rich has been around the space, and he's actually reverse aging, which he looks way better now. We already established than he did before. Maybe you don't know Rich now. This is the new Rich, the younger, more improved Rich. Hi, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, so this is recorded. So just to let everybody know when this recording is taking place is only a couple weeks after IT Nation Connect Global took place in Orlando. So I don't know, Matt and I probably look healthier today than we did 3 weeks ago.
Are you rested and recovered from the whirlwind?
As best as we could.
Enough.
I mean, I was about to say, you're seeing Matt at his best. I know you don't think it is, but that's as good as he gets. So
there's no Dunkin' though, so that's going to be a big negative.
So for people, I only said a couple things about you, but for anybody who doesn't know, which is weird again, they don't know you and what you do you mind giving a quick plug of yourself and everything about you?
No, I don't mind at all, actually. So I am the founding editor, the first editor, and then I was the executive editor for a long time at Channel Pro magazine, so a publication that has been covering the SMB channel and managed services since 2007. I left there early in 2023 on very good terms. By the way, I was just at a Channel Pro event week before last, and love my buddies over at Channel Pro. But I decided to go out on my own, and after years and years of writing about entrepreneurs, as in MSPs and startup founders and so on, I decided I'm going to go be an entrepreneur, and I launched my own publication called Channelholic, which covers the SMB channel and AI, security, managed services, M&A, the whole stew. And you can find that at www.channelholic.news.
We can put that in our notes too, for anybody who needs it.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. It'll be in our comments. So, all right. So, you've covered a lot over the years. You're basically, I mean, you're probably one of the OG reporters of the space.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there are still some, There's still some people out there, and it's like Harry Brailsford kind of came to mind immediately as
Yep.
somebody who, not a reporter exactly, but has definitely been, sharing information and insight with is at least as further back than I go. But yeah, there aren't a ton of journalists who've been writing about the space as long as I have.
Yeah,
How
I
did you
don't.
get into this space, Rich? Like how'd this start? What's the origin story?
The origin story for me getting in, becoming a journalist, or
Well, how'd you end up focusing on the SMB IT channel in particular?
so it's funny how that worked out. So I had been sort of a freelance writer, and then in the 90s I went to work in marketing at Microsoft, and then sort of like late 2004 I exited and thought I want to start writing again, and I did some freelance work for magazines. And a publication called Redmond Channel Partner called me up, and they said there's going to be this conference on the Microsoft campus. I live in Seattle, so this is driving distance for me. Could you go cover this thing for us? And it was SMB Nation. This was a Harry Brailsford event. All of my work at Microsoft had been in the enterprise world. I didn't know anything about SMB, but it's a paying gig. I go out to the Microsoft campus. I cover this SMB Nation thing. And it turned out to be this amazing sort of 2-3 day crash course in SMB technology generally, but managed services specifically. Managed services was really just starting to take flight. This was late 2006, just starting to kind of take off. And all of these, I'll just reel off some of these names that will be familiar to a lot of people in the audience here. Like Arlen Sorensen was there. Arnie Bellini was there. Carl Palachuk, Eric Simpson, Amy Babinchak, Len DeCostanzo. It was, today you look back on it and it's just like a who's who of everybody who matters in the managed services world. They were all like the Pied Pipers that they're trying to convince this room full of break fix people, this thing is coming and it's a big deal and you need to be a part of it. And I got interested, and then as fate would have it, a few weeks later, I get this phone call from somebody who says, "Hey, we're launching this magazine. It's going to be called Channel Pro, and it's going to be about the SMB channel." And I was like, he wanted me to help them get the editorial piece of that business off the ground. And I was like, I know exactly what this magazine needs to be because I just got this crash course in it. And so it just, one little random thing after the next got me exactly to here where I am today.
So, okay, let's unpack two things out of that. Well, one thing that's two parts: SMB and channel. They're two different industries essentially that are combined, that have collaborated, right? Because the channel is the vendors and all the MSPs that or any reseller is a channel. So it's not just MSPs. But then you talk about the SMB. So how are you able to navigate and interlock those? Because people don't understand, and we'll use Channel Partner Expo as a conference that comes to mind. It's a telecom conference. At least that's where it started. It still so really is. But that's when you learn about all the different types of partners, from agents to VARs to consultants to MSPs. So, because it's very vast. So how do you interlock those? How do you talk about them and maintain segmentation to educate people?
Well, I mean, if there's any one sort of oversimplified master theme to what I've been writing about for close to the last 2 decades now, it's been this progression from, VAR / break fix provider / solution provider to MSP. And it's not still to this day, if you find data on this, there aren't a ton of people out there who are getting like 100% of their revenue doing the work that MSPs do. But there has been that movement, the percentage of revenue of top line that comes from MRR has grown and grown and grown through the years. So really, originally, I was just covering the main sort of channel segments that focused on the SMB. But, I could see, as so many of the people I named before could see, where the money was going to be in that market going forward. And so that's kind of why I was writing for VARs. I was writing about how VARs can, prosper in the channel. But I was also sort of writing about this big new market that was developing and why everybody reading my stuff should be trying to get in on it too.
So what have you seen that's, obviously the technology has changed, right? From cloud to AI and all that, but from like a business perspective and what you see people focusing on, what's different between then and now? Is it mostly the managed services side of the house is the primary revenue driver and less break fix project work? Is there an approach that's different? Like if you were to place yourself, time machine wise, what's different between then and today?
What pops into my head. So you think back to that SMB Nation event I went to, and there were people trying to persuade the folks in the audience this managed services thing is going to work. And the folks in the audience, I mean, there was this one session I attended where all of these break fix guys were just literally howling at a panel full of managed services enthusiasts saying, you're telling me I'm going to bill my clients every month, even if nothing goes wrong, and they're going to pay me. Like, you're out of your mind. It was this crazy idea that a handful of people saw promise in. You fast forward to today, and there are, I don't even know, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of private equity money getting in on this space now, both on the MSP side and on the vendor side, in terms of the companies that sell to the MSPs. And we're seeing MSPs, I mean, the sophistication and the scale of some of the bigger MSPs out there right now was just inconceivable in 2006, 2007. So like from a business standpoint, that, that's kind of what comes to mind first to me, is that the market is much bigger. It is much better understood. It is a source of much, much greater interest and excitement among vendors, among investors, and that's still only growing. Basically, it's much more varied. You can go everywhere from the sole proprietor or the MSP with 2 or 3 employees to companies with 1,000, 1,200 employees doing business coast to coast. It's just a much, much bigger, more diverse, more sophisticated market than it was when I got started.
So this is a great segue into, now that we know they've invested in, I would say it's a general consensus that it's worked, right? Going from break fix to managed services, the industry has worked. It's happened. So now what's next then? Since you are the all-seeing eye essentially of the industry.
The Oracle, not actually Oracle,
The
thankfully.
Yeah. No, he's not foreseeing the future. But so where are you seeing things going towards now? Because the last couple of years has been cybersecurity has been a huge focus, and now AI jumps into it, which essentially wrecks cybersecurity in a way. So where do you see things going now with this, and where do you think the investments go?
Yeah, and going back before cybersecurity, there was cloud, right? And so
Mhm.
we've experienced these waves basically, where all of a sudden, as an IT provider, an MSP, you've got to like reinvent again, basically figure out this new thing. How am I going to use it? We've been through with a few of those cycles, and now we're really still in the early innings of the AI one. And in some ways, it's too obvious and easy an answer, but that really, really is the next big thing, huge thing for the folks in the audience of this show right now. And, and for me, it's been one of the sort of themes, biggest themes in my writing this year is, getting started in that space, getting started specifically, so AI is the next big thing, but really agentic AI is the next big thing. And understanding where MSPs play in that, how do you build and skill up and reimagine your workforce around agentic AI and what it's going to do internally in terms of how you run the business and how you should make money off of it with your clients. I mean, that's kind of the giant issue that everybody has to be thinking through right now. And it's not, it's very much work in progress right now. And I even a year from now, I don't think we're going to have the answers all sort of nailed down.
Have you seen, right? I know there's individual cases for everything, but in general, have you seen the industry get to a consensus on what the revenue stream is going to be with AI? Right? I've seen some people doing readiness projects. I've seen, time block support for prompt writing, some automation type stuff. Has there been a consensus on what everyone is doing on this, or is it still just we're trying to figure it out from what you've seen?
I think people are still trying to figure it out, and I think there are going to be sort of multiple answers to that question. I think if I'm an MSP and I'm trying to build towards the biggest revenue and profit opportunity right now, what I'm trying to think about is how do I, and it's in a lot of ways, it's not even primarily an MRR kind of business, although there is that component to it. I want to kind of figure out, how do I use generative AI and agents and weave those together and orchestrate those to automate workflows on behalf of my customers? Because that's going to be the biggest sort of near midterm business impact that AI has. And we're already seeing businesses, trying to figure this out. They will find somebody eventually who can do that. If you want to retain the customers you have, add more customers in the future, you're going to need to have an answer to that. And so I think that is the biggest sort of revenue opportunity there. But there's plenty of money to be made short term and beyond, really just in terms of getting people up and running on Microsoft Copilot and actually getting value out of Microsoft. You don't have to go all the way to I'm an agentic AI expert and I'm doing business process optimization for customers. And I do think as well there will be MSPs out there who never get all the way to I'm doing business process optimization, who will be able to outsource some of that to somebody else and still kind of build a successful. So there won't be one answer. There's no consensus, I think, right now, but we're starting to see some of the roads that people are going to wind up going down clarify.
I totally appreciate that. And to come back though, you said there's not much on maybe the MRR type selling yet. Do you consider AI to be is it more helping with operations internally?
A lot of the value comes in what would historically be called project work, right? So like you come in and you do an assessment and you say, here are the workflows that we could optimize, but that's project one. Project two is, well, first we've got to get your data consolidated and cleaned up, and we've got to make sure you've got governance and security in place. Now you're ready to start building. So these are all projects, and there's absolutely a recurring revenue stream around all this stuff once it's up and running, in terms of continually sort of optimizing and training people and overseeing it, making sure that it's delivering the results that the customer wants. But a lot of the money is going to be in these projects, basically, that you're doing, and there will be no shortage of those for a long, long time. A lot of folks in the audience here, they're going to go into a client, they're going to persuade a client to let them optimize a workflow, let's say. And when the customer sees, wow, look at the impact that this MSP just had on my HR and how much more efficient, and let's go to accounting, let's go to sales, it's going to be a long, long time before you run out of these projects.
Well, that's like kind of a scary thing, and to recycle a tired phrase, it's somewhat of a paradigm shift for a lot of MSPs in the way they operate. Right, they're used to the client initiating a lot of the next steps and project calls. Right, we need to implement this program because that's what we picked. We need to automate this thing because, well, we decided it was inefficient. Are you seeing this cause a shift, or are you seeing any of the organizations you talk to starting to move into this uh, more pure business consulting as opposed to this IT consulting arena we've been doing?
I'm definitely seeing that. It's a small source of concern for me. So the most interesting conversations I have about that kind of shift tend to be with the CEOs of some of these very, very large MSPs. And they've got staff in house. They've got their own little, AI skunk works, and they're skilling up to build solutions and put AI to work to be more productive internally, so that they can reassign resources. So I am seeing businesses sort of understand, MSPs understand that I need to have a different kind of conversation with customers going forward. It's not about managing the network and managing the devices and keeping the lights on and so on. It really, really is a more outcome oriented, business strategy oriented kind of conversation that requires a different kind of skill set. Not only from a technical standpoint, but even just from an account management. And there are people who are doing that right now. I worry a little bit about the MSPs who are not doing that, either because they don't quite know whether they should be, or they don't know how to get started, or whatever the issue kind of is. I worry about a future in which businesses are looking for a set of capabilities that are much, much easier to find from some of these larger MSPs, and that becomes a bit of a longer term competitive threat.
So, okay, that are concerned. You mentioned a concern of this. What's the concern? I mean, because I told before you got on, I still think AI is bloated. I don't think it's a practical application at this point. When I explain AI, I look at it as aggregated Google, or also automation with slightly on steroids in a way. So is that the general rumblings of concern? Is that stuff, or is it more on the side of we don't know where the data's coming from, and they're looking at the data sources and everything else? What's the concern?
Well, the concern is just the age old issue that if your customer needs something and they can't get it from you, they're going to get it from somebody else, basically. And so you just kind of need to be prepared for where the market is going to go. That said, it is a subject of concern that there is more. AI does not always live up to the promises that are made about it, and I really do believe it. For me personally, it's a very useful tool on a regular basis right now, and I believe it's going to get more genuinely useful over time. But I also am, frustrated on a daily basis by its inability to do what feel like things it ought to be able to do. And it is, for me personally, it's a subject of concern that people rely on AI for answers that they can't really kind of validate. I don't know about you guys. I've had the experience of quizzing, essentially querying AI about something that I happen to know something about. And so I can look at its answers and evaluate, is this a good answer or not? And I'll kind of look at it and realize, no, that's not a really good answer. That's 50% bullshit, but I mean, that's because I've been around long enough to detect that, essentially. But there are going to be all sorts of people in the world who are sort of, relying on the accuracy and the completeness and the hallucination-free nature of the, so that's a topic of concern too. I do believe this stuff kind of, it becomes less and less of an issue over time. But
Sure.
yeah.
Speaking of bullshit, then, do you compare it to the hype of IoT? How that was? Remember, IoT was in everything, everywhere, and I feel like AI is the same thing. I never learned anything. I still don't know what IoT is. I think I do, and it depends on who I talk to. Then I get confused again.
Yeah. Don't even get me started on IoT. It's a whole other podcast. I did this article like a year and a half ago, and I know a lot of folks at IDC. I love I'm not like bashing on IDC, but I pulled out a series of predictions made 12 months apart by IDC about IoT. in which I can't remember what the number was now, but it was something like, this is a $100 million market 1 year from now, and 1 year later, this is a $100 million market 1 year, just year after year, and it just never got there. And that was IoT. I don't think AI is IoT. I think there is a bit of a similarity between AI and IoT and cloud, even, and that it's not a thing in and of itself, right? It's an enabling technology. And so the question is, what do people do with, you don't sort of install cloud computing. You build cloud-based solutions, or you install cloud-based applications, and that enables certain things that maybe weren't possible before. And it's going to be a similar sort of thing with AI. You're not going out and buying a 6-pack of AI. You're buying a solution or a product that hopefully uses AI in a meaningful and a legitimate kind of way. And it, similar sort of thing with IoT. I mean, just the ability to collect information and from a wider range of devices in a wider range of locations, and pull it all together and analyze it and act on it. That's, it's a legitimate thing. It's just in that particular case, the industry never really, or at least hasn't yet, cracked the code on how to act on that opportunity.
Let's just stick with never really. Okay, just stick with it. Not hasn't yet.
Stop it, never.
Yeah. Let's not go with never really. It hasn't yet. Let's stick with never really. Just be done with it.
Well, we'll see. Go ahead.
Are you seeing any concerns either on the MSP side or the vendor side about the long-term sustainability of this? And I don't mean from an environmental side. I mean from the idea that, right, none of these AI companies are profitable at the moment, and there's not really a path to profitability for any of them that's known. Are there concerns about making big investments, like from a time perspective, into something with such an uncertain future?
I'm not hearing that so much, and I don't know that I would advise people to be cautious to invest on that basis. I do think it's a tricky spot to be in, to know that I could decide I'm going to go all in on OpenAI, and I mean, if there's any sort of frontier model builder out there with some real question marks about long-term sustainability, it's got to be OpenAI. I could make a huge bet the business kind of bet on OpenAI and then discover that was a bad bet. And so, like, choosing partners, choosing vendors, and here's another area where I think this is going to get really interesting and difficult and confusing maybe for MSPs, because one of the things that's happened in 2025 is we're seeing all of these startup vendors come into the managed services space with these AI automation tools, help desk automation mostly, but there's other kinds of AI-based automation coming. And so in 2026, MSPs are just going to be constantly approached by companies with these products that have very similar but not identical capabilities. And folks are going to have to figure out, like, do I adopt one of these or not, and if I do, which one? Because I could rebuild my help desk around this startup's tool, and that startup disappears in 6 months for one reason. So I think there's that kind of risk, and I do think people are concerned about that. I less often encounter the concern among MSPs or even among vendors that the whole AI thing is just going to go away. When you kind of zoom back out, obviously there's enormous concern in the investing world and in the general public about an AI bubble and what happens when that AI bubble bursts, and that is a legitimate concern. But if and when, and I think it's a when, personally, and if there is some kind of an AI bubble burst, I'm also persuaded by conversations I'm having with analysts and so on that MSPs will, for the most part, come out of that in pretty good shape. Again, unless they, there's some critical dependency that they built into their business that they can't sort of maneuver their way out of or around.
So And as I'm listening to you, does it almost make sense that the vendors should be doing project work for the MSPs first in AI?
What kind of project work?
You name it. How about their own adoption implementation of AI into their own systems first to make them more operationally mature and efficient to start with? And then second, to have them not only do that, but to teach them, it almost becomes on the job training for them with their own clients, the MSPs.
So, I mean, this raises a really interesting kind of topic. So, I've written twice now. So, just really within the last 6 months, two really, really big venture capital firms have funded these sort of AI native, AI first MSP roll ups. One of them's called Titan, the other one's called Shield Technology Partners. And a big part of what makes those roll-ups distinct from some of the other roll-ups we've seen out there is that they have, this sort of Silicon Valley grade AI expertise in-house and the ability to do the kind of project work you're talking about, Sean. It's like if you become part of the business, we're going to put what is popularly known as a forward deployed engineer on site with you, and they're going to kind of do the work to get you ready to really operationalize AI in a meaningful and a powerful way. I think in terms of, outside of that kind of model, in terms of like what vendors are doing or what marketplaces and distributors are doing, I think it's more about skills transfer and training and so on. There's a lot of that going on, and it's very important work. And yeah, vendors should be investing heavily in that right now for any number of reasons. I'm not, I'm certainly not seeing them actually do the work with or for their MSPs. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question whether that would scale, but if it did, actually, that would be a really interesting business to be in right now.
Maybe a third party vendor does the actual, they just work off the other products they already made for AI. And well, yeah. Matt, put my notice in today, starting a new business.
Yeah, you and everyone else in the entire industry.
I know, right? What do you do? AI. Shocking.
So, Rich, you mentioned some of the help desk automation and some of the other stuff. Is this finally the technology that through LLMs and through agentic solutions and just all the other AI things, have we finally found something that comes through on commoditizing L1? Like, is this the one after like 4 or 5 technologies have promised to do it that we've actually commoditized initial support?
We're not there right now, but I really do believe we will get there, and it won't be that far. And based on conversations I've had with some of the companies who are doing that, who are automating L1 work, we could probably be all the way there now. It's like the barrier to entry isn't the technology; it's the willingness of the MSP to like use it that way and just sort of back off and let the agents be the L1 in their business. But yeah, there's no question in my mind that there are going to be a lot fewer. I mean, essentially, the L1, L2 of the future is going to be what Microsoft sometimes refers to as an agent boss, right? I mean, so there will still be people who are working at that level at the help desk, but they won't actually be doing most of the work, is my expectation. They'll be sort of assisting, overseeing, monitoring the agents that are doing all the work and making sure that the agents aren't going off the rails, and then escalating, to L3 where that's necessary, and so on. I don't know how, I have no time horizon in mind for when L3 becomes automated. I don't see that coming right now. But yeah, I do think, and that's an important thing for an MSP to be mindful of. And it goes to this whole kind of business process optimization conversation we had before. If there are companies out there that are doing the L1 work, the L2 work with bots, and the L1, the L2 work is still sort of your bread and butter, is that a good, solid, long-term business plan for you, to the degree that that's really going to be commoditized kind of work?
We could go through. Rich, you're giving us so much to work with, man. We could be talking for hours about that. Oh, yeah. It's hard to keep a podcast with you to a specific agenda because there's so much you open up. So let's switch gears then, because oh God, no. Okay, let's switch gears. You just finished up, like I mentioned before, IT Nation Connect Global was just a few weeks ago. So how does that tie into everything we talked about so far, or what were your thoughts about the event of what you picked up as far as the industry was concerned?
Well, so I guess to tie it, to tie one piece of it basically to stuff that we've been talking about here, from a product standpoint, there were obviously all sorts of different product announcements made during the show. The one that jumped out the most at me was that first little agent deliverable on the ConnectWise MDR service and some of the SLA implications of that. And that really is just a toe in the pool for ConnectWise in terms of where it's going to go with building agentic capabilities into the platform and the various technologies running on the platform. So that was interesting to me. It kind of ties to, I was talking about all these AI native startups. I think back to when SaaS and cloud was a new thing. And the incumbents, as we think of them, the companies like ConnectWise that were big names with big partner bases back then, they were still kind of focused on the endpoint, and all these sort of little nimble startups show up and they want to manage the SaaS. And there was this question in my mind at the time, well, who comes out ahead in that competition? And we've kind of seen that ultimately what happens is the big names in the industry, they either replicate that functionality, they buy those companies, they integrate with those companies. So we're kind of at a place right now where there are all these nimble, agile little AI startups, and it'll be a thing to see. Where are we 2-3 years down the road there? I have those companies, their functionality has been replicated, they've been bought up, they've been incorporated. So that's another thing that, the IT Nation Connect brings to mind. But, the interesting thing for me, Sean, that I did a bunch of writing coming out of that event, but the thing that I devoted the most attention to, and the thing that really struck me, is you guys are a little bit over a year into the Manny Ravello era at ConnectWise. And he and senior members of the leadership team that he's put together there really, really made a point of not running away from some of the frustration that was out there in the partner base. Just totally acknowledging, and like from the general session stage, I get it. I understand. And it's like, you didn't know who your account manager was. And if you had a billing issue, it took, like, I get it. And I've spent the better part of the last year kind of working on it. And we really think we've kind of put that issue behind us. There's this thing in the industry right now about the pros and cons of partnering with these big companies with really sophisticated products and big capabilities like ConnectWise. I found the humility, the candor, the transparency, the authenticity that ConnectWise exhibited on stage very different and kind of refreshing. And I don't know, I didn't have enough conversations with MSPs at the event to know if they felt that way too, or my guess is there's a lot of, well, let's wait and see.
Right.
But I go to a lot of conferences, guys, and I don't see that very often. And I think we need more of it in the industry. And so it was just really interesting to me to see that kind of honesty from the company. And then here, not just, it wasn't just acknowledging, we understand why some of you are frustrated with that. Hearing the specifics on what the company has done in the last 12 months to rectify those issues so that you can really kind of hit the ground running in 2026. And that's, in an interview I did with him, that's what Manny Ravello said to me at one point, is that this first 12 months as the CEO of ConnectWise has been a crawl, walk, run process. And 2025, frankly, was a lot about crawl and walk because there were some issues to address, and he's addressed them. And he's like, 2026 is about running. And ready, set, go, Sean. Let's see you guys start running.
So speaking of 2026, I think let's talk about some predictions, right? Normally we end the show with a question about habits, but I think it makes more sense to talk about you come on this time next year and we ask you the same question about what was different. What do you
Yeah.
think you're answering about what happened in 2026 that's new or unique or industry trend? Like, what stands out to you if you step into the time machine and go the other direction now, forward instead of back?
Boy. And,
Mm,
part of me, part of what makes a question like that intimidating is, you guys in the audience, everyone's familiar here with MCP and that protocol and its amazing implications for how software works and so on. Anthropic introduced MCP about a year ago, almost exactly. It's like it feels like it's been around forever, and it's a year old, and so it's like, man, we're talking about where are we going to be 12 months from now, and almost whatever I predict is I will not have thought enough deep enough. It will not be enough to predict. Um, but I want to say that we are going to see. So I was interviewing uh, somebody last week at a conference I attended who was kind of talking about the distinction between what he called AI in the business and AI as the business. And AI in the business is using AI to automate, internal processes for the MSP, and that's where we've seen most of the traction so far. And most of the question marks still are around how do I turn AI, how do I do AI as the business? What do I kind of productize, sell to my customers? And I think a year from now, it's going to be less of a mystery. I think there will be more. It won't just be the cream of the MSP crop that has some answers to this question. I don't know what the percentage of MSPs will be, but I think we will be having a conversation about 3, 4, 5 different AI as the business, customer facing AI offerings that MSPs in reasonably large numbers are delivering with assistance from existing vendors that we haven't heard of now. I think there's a lot of promise in that space right now, and a lot of potential, and a lot of questions. And I think it won't be 100% in focus a year from now, but it'll be much closer to being in focus. It'll be less, I wonder what, and much more, how do I do that thing, that specific thing?
So, since we're doing predictions, Sean, I'm going to ask you the same question. You step into your time machine. What do you see in 2026 that you're looking back on that changed?
I'm going to slightly agree with Rich on one part, but go a little bit further. I think it's going to be a regrouping year next year. I think that AI being the wild, wild west that it is, it made everybody dream everything up to and including the Terminator, right? And Skynet, right? So, and I think you're going to see a regroup. I brought up earlier when I said about data. I think you're going to start seeing companies that existed before that did data cleansing and data and data, maybe some governance and compliance. I think you're going to start seeing that be applicable to the AI industry more so, because I think that they're going to find that it's basically like you have a car with no engine. Yeah, it spits out a bunch of stuff, but like Rich said earlier in our interview, this isn't all. Some of this is bullshit, and so it becomes useless data or useless anything. So you're worse off. So I think you're going to start seeing a resurgence of like companies that do this stuff, that do data cleansing and are warehousing some of it, so to speak. I think that'll be a big business. I mean, there's so much more to go into, but I think that'll be it.
I totally agree, and it just calls to mind there are all sorts of these business segments, these sort of vendor categories that sort of exist now, or in some cases don't exist now, that are going to be a big thing. And so, yeah, data cleansing, data consolidation. There are going to be companies playing in that space that are going to be much needed. Data security is going to be a huge thing. AI security and agentic AI security in particular. If you've got 1,000 little agents running around in your client environment, you really need to make sure that they're not being compromised, hacked, that, you know, that 15 of those 1,000 agents weren't planted there. So there are just a lot of different openings and opportunities for vendors out there right now.
I would agree. I think it comes down to the only way any business feels good about it is if they put some sort of guidelines around it of knowing what good really means for everything. Just for a feel good for my own self as a business before I adopt it. We haven't done it yet. It hasn't happened. So that next year, these are going to be the things you start seeing: is the compliance and governance, the data. That shit's it's all going to start happening. Otherwise, people are never going to fully adopt or implement because they're afraid of the unknown because it hasn't been protected. You know, there's no seal of approval from anywhere. So what do? Just keep running with it with no seal of approval? That's not going to happen.
No, and you know, everything you're talking about is so all of that is like laying in the foundation for the business process optimization stuff that happens later, and that's all project work. So that, you know, that's all stuff that needs to get done. It's a revenue opportunity for MSPs, and yeah, I think it's actually a good bet that there will be a lot of attention in 2026 to that sort of getting customers AI ready kind of business right now, data cleansing and beyond, governance, security, etc.
What about you, Matt? Prediction, man.
So I think we're going to see some of this Wild West kind of wild hype turn into things that are actionable and utility over the next year. I think some of we think it'll do this. We think we might have an opportunity to automate this. I think some of that will materialize such that it'll be a little more clear, both on the MSP and vendor side, what actually has traction from a business perspective and what's just a cool idea that you came up with, you know, at the bar one night. And I think it'll be a little more obvious, like where the real use cases are. Because right now, the real use case is potentially everything, right? You know, you start talking about AI and you get the like blinders on, and hey, we can automate everything. We can replace everything with AI. And I think this year, if we're having this conversation, the end of 2026, we'll go back and say that answer crystallized somewhat, and we see what's really getting traction, what really worked, and what just was a cool experiment.
And there is, you know, I think there are a lot of MSPs in the audience here who will very much welcome that, because there is a lot of concern about the Wild West aspect and the hype cycle and the exaggerated claims and promises and so on. And so if there's less of that, basically a year from now, and we can sort of see who really can deliver on some of the promises they've been making and who can't, I think that will be helpful to a lot of people out there, because there's just so much going on and just even keeping up with it, but then just making decisions based on that information without really knowing what's legit and what's hype. It's hard.
Well, the hype could only go one way at this point. It'd be hard to have more than there is now.
Yeah, nobody's predicting that, right? Yeah.
No.
All right, well, Rich, we're out of time. As Sean alluded to, we could actually talk all day about this, and it's always a good sign when we run out of time for the interview as opposed to having to fill airtime. So, one, thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for the insights. This was a fantastic conversation.
Well, absolutely a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate the invitation, and just give me a ring anytime, and we can yak about any of this stuff some more.
We should make it once a quarter recap with Rich.
Yeah, there you go.
See, look at that, Rich. We just made our own segment about you just now.
I love it.
We'll play the recording of the predictions and see how we did.
Yeah.
I'm probably so wrong. Let's not do that. All right, Rich, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. It was a good talk, like Matt said. Otherwise, everybody watching this, you'll be seeing us again every 2 weeks, I guess. I think that's the schedule, right? Every 2 weeks this comes out.
Bi-weekly.
Yeah, bi-week. Yep, that's what it means. Bi means two. Thank you, Matt, for that. But
You're
everybody,
welcome.
IT Nation, thank you so much. And before Matt says anything else, that's wildly imaginative for him. I'll see you all soon. Take care.
I'm on a whole new level.